For 10 years. I was married to my sworn enemy. No true affection, only murderous intent. He raised an army for his beloved, while I slaughtered his entire clan for my childhood sweetheart. At the height of our hatred, he imprisoned me in a secret chamber, demanding I become his slave. I feigned a kiss, and in the midst of our passionate embrace, I slipped poison into his mouth. The treacherous minister and the venomous woman met their end together. When I opened my eyes again, Xie Jingyu and I had returned to 10 years prior. I was the orphan daughter of a military family, he was the heir to the marquis household. His heart was consumed by his white moonlight. Yet I turned away, accepting the imperial decree to enter the palace as empress. Love was irrelevant. This lifetime, I only sought victory. But one night, he burst into my chambers, gnashing his teeth as he spat, "You haven't poisoned me to death yet. And you're already thinking of remarrying?" Xie Jingyu and I were husband and wife for only 10 years. Yet we battled for a lifetime. In childhood, our father's power struggles led to our clan's downfall. He was the radiant heir to the marquis household. I became a destitute orphan from a fallen military family. In youth, our hearts first stirred with budding affection. He grew up innocent with the chief minister's daughter who tormented me. I grew up alongside the crown prince who despised him. In young adulthood, factions and eunuchs clashed in the struggle for the throne. He became the powerful minister supporting Prince Ching, while I served as the general backing the crown prince. In the end, the crown prince ascended the throne as emperor, and the chief minister's daughter became the imperial consort. He dug up an ancestral betrothal agreement, declaring he would marry me to spite the emperor. The emperor urged me to reconsider, but fearing the power behind Xie Jingyu, I resolved to monitor him personally. 10 years of marriage brought only mutual loathing. I laced his wine with poison, making him spit blood at a palace banquet. He laced my food with herbs, reducing me to a twitching, itching mess. My ruthless tactics to hurt him, coupled with my unforgiving nature and lack of compassion, earned me the infamous title of poisonous woman. He pretended not to care, yet stirred up turmoil in the court, framing loyal ministers and innocent generals, driving the emperor to exhaustion. When the emperor died young and demanded the imperial consort be buried alive, he raised an army in rebellion. Yet upon capturing Jinling, his first act was to imprison me in a dark chamber. Chains bound my limbs as he administered aphrodisiacs, watching me gasp for breath, tormenting me relentlessly. I glared at him with the most venomous, cursing gaze I could muster. When I first learned of his rebellion, I led troops to slaughter over 40 members of the marquis household. His revenge was only to be expected. Yet he merely knelt before me on one knee, brushing my eyelids with a gesture that seemed both wistful and triumphant as he spoke. "Madam, these eyes of yours are most beautiful when unfocused and unfathomable." I snorted coldly, gazing at him with pity. "Do you truly believe that in your current state of utter madness, Su Qingtang could ever treat you as she once did? Xie Jingyu, no one will ever love you." Xie Jingyu detested pity more than anything. Provoked, he wrenched my jaw open and pressed his lips to mine. "What right do you have to judge me? Pei Jiayin. We're both rotten to the core." His force was so fierce it felt like he wanted to devour me whole. That single kiss claimed his life. It shattered his dream of ascending the throne and marrying the late emperor's imperial consort. "Master, are you truly going to the palace?" I froze. 16-year-old Liuli looked at me with worry. "Master," His Majesty said, "if you don't wish to go, you needn't force yourself. He will personally seek the Empress Dowager to revoke the order." Her youthful face still held traces of baby fat. Liuli wore twin pigtails, her large, watery eyes brimming with innocence and naivety. This image clashed sharply with the memory of the cold, sullen figure who had once slapped me. Following her words, I lowered my gaze. Sure enough, I held the secret edict sent by the Empress Dowager. An edict commanding me to marry Emperor Xiaorongheng and enter the palace as his empress. In my previous life, my first reaction upon receiving this edict was utter absurdity. As a child, while accompanying my father and brothers on campaigns in the northwest, I was caught in a sudden avalanche, buried beneath the snow for a day and night. I was only rescued after extreme peril. The cold seeped into my body, leaving me barren. How could the Empress Dowager possibly choose me for the palace? Yet now, I merely clenched the edict tightly in my hand. The sensation of the poison still lingered, my chest twisting in unrelenting agony. I turned to ask Liuli, "Is it the 5th year of Guangyu now?" Liuli nodded blankly, then quickly shook her head. "Has this edict frightened you senseless, mistress? The crown prince ascended the throne yesterday. It is now the 1st year of the new dynasty's Wending era. The 1st year of Wending. The new emperor ascended the throne. Snow falls in September, an omen of bountiful harvest. This year I was 20, not yet married to Xia Jingyu, not yet entangled in mutual torment and resentment, not yet wasting my life for no reason." Frantic footsteps sounded outside the door. My other maid, Xuanji, poked her head in. "Mistress, you guessed right. That nest of thieves in the Xia family proved cunning indeed, covering their dealings with Prince Qing so thoroughly that the Ministry of Justice could find no trace. Now that little bastard Xia Jingyu has rolled out of the imperial prison. He returned to his mansion? No. He went to the Shin family." "The Shin family, Shin Qingtang." I smiled knowingly, tucking the imperial decree into my sleeve. No need to resist the decree. I will marry Xiaorongheng. Xia Jingyu and I were enemies from the start. When my father and elder brother marched to the northwest, the Xia household was responsible for supplying reinforcements and transporting provisions. Yet the supplies never arrived. By the final decisive battle, the reinforcements were nowhere to be seen. My father and brothers perished on the battlefield. My mother, stricken by the devastating news, fell gravely ill and passed away. Yet the Xia household turned the tables, claiming my father had abruptly mobilized troops without imperial authorization, thus shifting blame away from them. The matter was swept under the rug. The Xia family, maternal kin of the empress, was a long-established aristocratic powerhouse, even though the then head of the Xia clan and the empress were estranged. As distant as strangers, one cannot write 2 Xias in one stroke. No one could stand up for me. My father, born a commoner, had earned his noble title through military merit. With him gone, I was left entirely on my own. Xia Jingyu's birthday fell on the same day as mine. At the same hour, he was surrounded by admirers showering him with praise. While I sat in mourning within the mansion, the Xia household sent a birthday gift, a hideously ugly vase. When the servant delivered it, he even waved his hand and frowned, muttering about bad luck after it brushed against the white mourning cloth in the hall. Feeling humiliated, I stormed into the Xia residence alone, terrifying everyone present. Xia Jingyu sat drinking in the hall, beaming as he chatted with Shin Qingtang beside him, a picture of golden boy and jade girl. I let out a cold laugh, clutching the vase as I strode straight toward him. The moment he looked up, before his puzzled question could escape his lips, the vase shattered against his head. That year, at 15, I smiled as I told him, "Xia heir, I have no way to repay your birthday gift. After much thought, I decided the most fitting present is to give you this touch of spring upon your forehead." The entire Xia household pointed fingers at me, cursing me as a bringer of misfortune and a harbinger of death. They called me a star of solitary calamity, blaming me for wiping out their entire family. They wanted to drag me to the authorities, exposing to the world the true face of the fine daughter the Pei clan had raised. Alone, I was shoved and pushed, accidentally injuring my legs in the chaos. In the end, it was Xiaorongheng who intervened, using his status as crown prince to threaten them. He carried me out of the Xie residence. I asked him, "You think I was wrong too?" His steady steps carrying me matched the certainty in his voice. "No. To me, you will never be wrong." Exchanging my injured leg for Xie Jingyu's bloodied head. I thought the matter would end there. Yet 2 days later, I awoke to find myself in the wilderness, bound hand and foot, utterly drained. Someone had tied me up and hung me upside down from a tree, my mouth stuffed with a cloth. Xie Jingyu sat lazily on a branch, observing me with 3 or 4 layers of gauze still wrapped around his head. "Miss Pei, your distaste for me matters little. But that day at my residence, your raucous outburst frightened a Tang and scarred her face. I shall not let you off the hook." I rolled my eyes, infuriated by my disregard. He turned and left, never to return. Miss Pei has tougher skin than ordinary women. The wound on Ah Tang's face is nothing to you. So Miss Pei shall remain hanging here. It'll teach you a lesson, never cross someone's boundaries so lightly. I hung in that tree for a day and night until servants from the mansion found me and cut me down. That was the beginning of our enmity. Later, in the struggle for the throne, it was a whirlwind of frame-ups, assassinations, open and covert battles, all fought to claim lives. Until my 20th year, when I used a longbow to strike the Prince of Qing square in the forehead from 100 meters away, drawing the final line under the Succession War. A decade of blood feud. A decade of mortal enemies. Yet I never imagined that the final decade of our lives would be spent as husband and wife. Indeed, I died. Yet I lived again. I returned to 10 years prior, before I became the poisonous woman. Just as in my previous life, the empress dowager decided that I must marry Xiao Rongheng the day after his ascension. His foundation was unstable. He needed a woman of prestige and influence within the court to consolidate his power. In theory, that person should never, ever have been me. Descendant of a disgraced minister, baron, a murderer. Deeply sinful, I was utterly unfit to embody the virtues of an imperial consort. Yet few knew that Xiao Rongheng had suffered from cold poison in his youth, leaving him frail and frequently ill. Exhausted by the struggle for the throne, his days were numbered. He needed a capable woman to support the new king. With the throne itself unstable, the presence of a legitimate heir became less critical. Thus, as his childhood sweetheart who commanded armies and had meritorious service in his rise to power, I naturally became the unquestionable choice. Yet I did not accept that decree. Xiao Rongheng said he would not condemn me to a lifetime of regret. And so he defied his mother's edict. He selected another woman from a distinguished family instead, elevating her to imperial consort. That woman was Xie Jingyu's white moonlight, Shen Qingtang. Barely a month after the imperial wedding, Xie Jingyu unearthed an 800-year-old marriage contract from some obscure source. Using the imperial gold token bestowed upon the Xie family by the previous emperor, he traded Xiao Rongheng for a wish. He demanded me to marry him. Xiao Rongheng sneered coldly, ready to reject it. But I accepted the betrothal before the stunned gazes of all present. Xie Jingyu harbors wolfish ambitions, trouble is bound to arise. Keeping him under my watchful eye is the safest course. Find his weaknesses, and I can wipe out his entire clan. But this lifetime, I've changed my mind. Worldly ties bear no fruit, karmic bonds entwine. Better to untangle them sooner. I received the Empress Dowager's decree, choosing to walk this life's path with the one I truly cherish. I will secure Xiao Rongheng's throne and wash away the shame the Xie clan cast upon my father and brothers. Shen Qingtang need not enter the palace, and Xie Jingyu may have his wish fulfilled. There will be no war, no famine, no corpses littering the fields, no suffering of the people. I will win. The decree was barely received when someone knocked at the door. The doorkeeper reported, "My lady, the young mistress of the Shen household has hosted a flower viewing banquet at the Shen residence and invites you to join." A flower viewing banquet? Then let us go. Xie Jingyu happened to be at the Shen residence. Since I am to die alongside him, I must see if he has changed in any way. In my previous life, Shen Qingtang did indeed host a flower viewing banquet, though that was after her imperial decree appointing her as consort arrived. Shen Qingtang invited all the noble ladies of Jinling to celebrate her final flower viewing banquet as an unmarried woman. No one dared offend the future consort. And neither did I wouldn't dare offend the wife of Xiao Rongheng. At the banquet, Shen Qingtang seated me in the most conspicuous spot. Dazed, I watched as each woman drew from her bosom exquisitely crafted handkerchiefs. Shen Qingtang explained to me with a smile, General Pei has shouldered his family's responsibilities since childhood. Unlike us idlers, he finds solace in admiring flowers and tending plants during his leisure. This item is called a flower blossom handkerchief, sewn by one's birth mother. It's used to wrap flowers and plants, then buried in the earth, symbolizing casting off ill-fated bonds to welcome true destiny. She was right. Having shouldered my family's responsibilities alone since childhood, I'd grown accustomed to courtly intrigue and scheming. Yet I knew nothing of how to treat friends, or how to play like a little girl. No one ever taught me these things, she was the first. I thought she might become my friend. Just as I opened my mouth to thank her, I heard whispers below. What good is climbing high for an orphan girl? What respectable family would ever consider her? What true fate could she possibly have? Sister Tang even took the trouble to explain to her, some are born under an unlucky star, orphaned at birth. Even if she knew, what difference would it make? Who would embroider these for her? Could her dead mother crawl out of her grave? A mere woman, mingling among men year after year, slinging her arms around soldiers, even scheming to seduce His Majesty. They say she frequented the Crown Prince's residence even when he was still heir apparent. What good did all her scheming do? How could the Crown Prince ever take notice of such trash? Someone snorted derisively, leaning closer to whisper, "You don't understand. How could A Tang ever truly confide in her? That girl killed her own father and brothers in childhood, then took her anger out on Prince Xia. She barged into the Xia residence, ruined his birthday banquet, showing a shrewish temperament even then. She injured the prince and wounded A Tang. A Tang endured all these years just to avenge the prince. They did it on purpose. Even as a general, with sharper senses than most, I knew that deliberately muffled yet still audible voice was meant for my ears alone. Shen Qingtang lowered her gaze to sip her tea, her smile radiant with satisfaction. The cup of floral wine shattered in my hand. I memorized every one of their faces. 10 years later, when Xie Jingyu plotted rebellion and forced the palace to yield, I compelled them to take up spears and march to the front lines. They screamed and struggled, no longer questioning why a woman couldn't be a general. But the battlefield knows no gender. The arrows piercing their chests might let them understand in their next lives the hardship of those who defend their homeland. Looking back now, they were nothing but a bunch of naive children, sheltered and carefree, believing someone would always bail them out no matter what they said or did. That's fine. I envy them. The very second before stepping onto the carriage, someone caught my hand. Liuli Xuanji gasped in surprise, but fell silent upon recognizing the figure. Leaning against the plush seat, his eyes and brows brimmed with joy, radiating delight. Clad in a moon-white brocade robe, his jet-black hair cascading like a waterfall, the sway of his folding fan couldn't conceal his noble bearing and dashing charm. Like clouds in a dream, snow beyond the clouds, spring within the snow. I hadn't seen him like this in 10 years. After this winter, he would waste away at a staggering pace, becoming frail, gloomy, a mere shadow of himself, secluded deep within the palace, unwilling to see anyone. His lips had been curled in a smile, but upon seeing my state, he became flustered and floundered. "Why are you crying? It's not too late to change your mind now. I will handle everything that follows." Xiao Rongheng was wiping away my tears. So I was crying. I still knew how to cry. Who said I wish to back out? I am willing. I accepted the imperial decree myself. I know exactly what I'm doing. He stared at me intently. His gentle voice tinged with bitterness, but I always believed. Believed you harbored feelings for second young Master Xie. I froze. My expression instantly twisting into something strange. My heart felt like I'd swallowed shit. After a moment, I shook my head firmly. How could your majesty think such a thing? I bear a blood feud with Xie Jingyu. I would drink his blood and devour his flesh. I seized his hand and spoke the truth I'd never voiced in either lifetime. Your majesty is the most important person to me. Xiao Rongheng hesitated for a long moment, finally swallowing the words that had nearly slipped from his lips. He looked at me as if I were a child. The formal imperial edict conferring the title of empress, registered by the Ministry of Rights and sealed with the Jade Imperial Seal, would soon be delivered to the Pei family before being proclaimed to the realm. In 1 month's time, you shall be my empress. I stared at him blankly. His sleeves were chilled. Having waited outside for an unknown duration. Perhaps it had been the same in my past life, from the moment the Empress Dowager's decree arrived until now. He had always waited outside. Upon learning of the refusal, he departed with a mix of understanding and relief, leaving no trace behind. The Shin residence was magnificent. Every brick, tile, blade of grass, and tree meticulously crafted. Shin Qingtang's flower viewing banquet invited the capital's noble ladies. The emperor, incognito, was naturally not among the guests. He returned to the palace, and I entered the Shin residence alone. The old friends and familiar scenes remained unchanged. Yet I was no longer the person I once was. Walking through the winding corridor with Liuli, I spotted 2 young ladies approaching me from the end, just as I remembered. Su Ming, the younger sister of the Vice Minister of Rights, and Jiang Qin, the daughter of the junior minister of the Supreme Court of Justice. Both were Shin Qingtang's closest confidants and Xie Jingyu's beloved companions. The one in the lead charged at me the moment she saw me. Her voice sharp and accusatory. What are you doing here? When did the Shin household ever invite such a coarse, vile, and malicious creature as you? What? Was it not enough to falsely accuse Xie heir and send him to the Supreme Court? Now you come here to discuss someone else? Shin Qingtang was the foremost noble lady in the capital. Her father the chief minister of the current dynasty. Representing the aristocratic elite, Chief Minister Shin had never engaged in factional strife. His influence was immense both within the court and among the populace. His ability to command immediate obedience surpassed even that of the newly enthroned emperor. Everyone assumed Miss Shin would become empress. Even Shin Qingtang herself believed it. The Shin family groomed her for imperial favor, leaving Xie Jingyu with no chance from the start. But now, the way these girls treat me mirrors how aristocratic clans treat the emperor's inner circle. Su Ming cautiously pulled her aside. Be careful. She's different from us, she holds an official position. Jiang Qin snorted coldly. So what? Every word I say is the truth. My father told me she's climbed to her position by framing countless loyal ministers and generals. And I don't know how many people she's had killed. Besides, even if I insult her, what can she do? If she has the guts, let her beat me to death right here. Does she dare? I watched her with keen interest. My expression unreadable, though her previous life's misery flashed through my mind. When Xie Jingyu's army attacked the city, she was dragged to the front lines. Her frail frame couldn't even lift a spear, yet she was forced onto the battlefield. The woman wept uncontrollably, crying and screaming as she ran toward the enemy commander, only to be struck through the heart by an arrow, dying with eyes wide open. Seeing my prolonged silence, the young lady grew even more arrogant. Pei Jiayin, let me tell you plainly, the palace is about to confer titles on the consorts. Our Qingtang tops the list of 4, and even the lowest rank she will attain is that of imperial consort. Today's banquet is called a flower viewing, but it's really our celebration and farewell for Qingtang. Don't you dare ruin this banquet. Or else when Qingtang becomes empress, she won't let you, a lowly lackey, off the hook. You. Liu Li tried to stand up for me, but I blocked her with my arm. Akin. Aiming. Don't be rude. A flitting silhouette hurried around the corner, her brocade robes shimmering like rippling water. Qingtang looked like a fairy, captivating even as she jogged. But the first thing I saw wasn't her, it was the calm, composed face behind her. One distant glance was enough. I knew he had reincarnated too. General. Please forgive them. They are merely young ladies spoiled by their families. Do not take offense. Qingtang reached out to grasp my hand, but as her arm extended, Xia Jingyu intercepted it. Jingyu. Xia Jingyu studied my face with a smile. Yet his words were venomous. Women of the Pei clan are skilled at concealing poison. Be cautious. Tang. Draw any closer, and you might not even know how you met your end. Just hours ago, I was a victorious rebel. Before I could savor a single day of triumph, I'd been cast back into the most powerless and helpless phase of my life. Anyone would feel resentment. Ignoring his sarcasm, I turned to Qingtang with a calm gaze. I hadn't realized I'd become an uninvited guest at Miss Shen's banquet. Since you clearly have no desire to host me, I shall take my leave. General. How can you say such a thing? My invitation was sincere. Her anxious frown made her look pitifully vulnerable. Yet I recalled the years Qingtang ruled the harem. The number of maids who died inexplicably during that time was more than tenfold. Too naive to be the foremost noble lady of the capital, not ruthless enough to carve out a place for herself under Empress Dowager Xia. I regarded her impassively. The Shen family's invitations to all households are meticulously recorded. Who was invited and who accepted is common knowledge. That your dearest friend was so surprised by my arrival proves my name was never on the list. Both paled. Qingtang's smile turned awkward. Following the pattern of my past life, she would soon recover and explain that treating the general as an honored guest justified the special treatment. I would believe her, follow her into the inner chambers, and become a laughingstock for others' amusement. But this life was different. Xia Jingyu stepped forward before her, staring intently at my face. When I shot him a cold glance, his smile only grew more insolent. General Pei remains as spoilsport as ever. Yet two silly girls uttered some foolish words. And you've let it get under your skin to this extent. I hear the palace is preparing to announce a new consort. Why not guess who it might be? General? Jiang Qinxuming mocked my orphan status and coarse nature, a choice perfectly aligned with his desires. Qingtang tugged at his sleeve in flustered annoyance. Shielded behind him in a protective embrace, if Qingtang enters the harem, I fear I might lose my mind. Who knows what monstrous deeds I might commit. The 20-year-old Pei Jiayin wouldn't lay a hand on a woman, but the 30-year-old Pei Jiayin might. Xia Jingyu is afraid that before Qingtang becomes consort, I'll stab her dead with a dagger. You really are a mad dog who loves to dream in broad daylight. He stood so close I could almost feel his breath. Just as on the day he died. Second young Master Xia has lost his mind. This general finds it thoroughly tiresome and will not disturb him further. Yet as I reached the gates of the Shen residence, that lazy voice drifted from afar once more. This time, the words that slipped from his lips forced me to turn back. Madam, you are truly heartless. Had you been willing to yield, I would have granted you every wish. In that instant, all was still. The pavilion stood silent. Young Master Xia. Who are you calling madam? Jiang Qinsu and Ming stared at him in utter bewilderment. Even Qingtang couldn't fathom what he was saying or whom he was addressing. But I quickly grasped his purpose. On the other side of the Shen residence gates, Xiao Rongheng's face was deathly pale. The emperor has arrived, this flower viewing is over. The earlier incident was put aside as all the women gathered in the front hall. Everyone performed the kneeling and bowing ritual. But Xiao Rongheng alone took Qingtang's hand. Shin Qingtang's cheeks flushed slightly as she shyly placed her hand in his. Jiang Qin's smugness was impossible to hide. She brushed dust from her clothes, stood up, and shot me a triumphant glance. Your Majesty must have come to deliver an imperial edict to Qingtang. Our Qingtang is to become empress. Fool. Xiao Rongheng had been spoiled by his gentle temperament during his time as crown prince. Everyone knew the crown prince was too gentle, kind, respectful, and frugal to be favored, and everyone took advantage of him. Even now, people easily forgot he had long ascended to the throne. Not just anyone could shout orders at him. Xiao Rongheng turned to me. Who is this? I shook my head. Not familiar. Attendant. Slap her face. Xiao Rongheng frowned. Insolence and slander against a high minister, 50 lashes across the face. Then sent to Tianning Temple for reflection. Jiang Qin's smile froze on her face. Jiang Qin frantically reached for Shin Qingtang's sleeve, only to be pushed away coldly. Qin, you overstepped your bounds. Qingtang. Only then did she collapse limply to the ground. Xiao Rongheng's gaze swept past Jiang Qin, his gentle eyes finally settling on Shin Qingtang. As for this Miss Shin, Xie Jingyu's lips curved slightly, his gaze challenging as he looked at me. I understood his meaning. Xiao Rongheng would marry Shin Qingtang, and I would suffer. Seeing my pain would be his final satisfaction before death. As for Shin Qingtang, with his methods, he would find countless ways to reclaim her in the future. He believed that because he won in the previous life, I would forever be the loser. But I met his gaze without flinching, calm and composed. Soon enough, he sensed something was amiss. Shin Qingtang, along with all the female members of the Shin family, was immediately imprisoned in the imperial dungeons. Their fate would be decided after the Supreme Court rendered its verdict. Shin Qingtang, who moments before had seemed utterly detached, was struck as if by lightning. Xie Jingyu's composed expression finally cracked. The flower viewing was merely a pretext. Once the imperial decree appointing the empress reached the Ministry of Rites, Shin Qingtang's banquet would proceed as scheduled. The Vice Minister of Rites, once a disciple of the Chief Minister, reverently placed Shin Qingtang's name atop the imperial consort selection list and the list of eligible maidens. They believed she would be chosen, Shin Qingtang herself included. While the ladies admired the flowers, high officials held secret discussions. Xiao Rongheng's ascension to the throne as the new emperor was seen by the aristocratic clans merely as the arrival of a new puppet. Sending their daughters into the imperial harem was the first step in controlling that puppet. Unfortunately for them, they had existed far too long and had become a nuisance. Faction building and factionalism deserved death. Using the Shin family's downfall as a warning to the world demonstrated the new emperor's thunderous resolve. By replacing key civil officials with his own men, Xiao Rongheng secured half his throne. I informed him of the aristocratic clan's secret conspiracy. He personally wiped out those powerful figures, naturally requiring me to serve as a shield in the inner quarters. Male descendants beheaded, female kin exiled, that was the Shin family's final fate. My only regret was that Xie Jingyu was not among them. Shin Qingtang was led away, her tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. I felt a pang of melancholy. How could you bear to see such beauty weeping? If I were you, I'd intercept the prison cart and lock her away in a golden chamber. A debt of life-saving grace, even if Miss Shin vowed to marry only an imperial house. Seeing my face night after night would soften even the hardest heart. Is the lady provoking me? I shook my head. I'm helping you. Once you two are sweet as honey, you'll have no reason to keep ruining my plans. Xie Jingyu glared at me as if she wanted to tear me apart, her eyes narrowing in fury like an enraged fox. How did you know about the Shin family meeting? Husband. I raised an eyebrow at him, my voice low enough for only us to hear. Knowing your bedmate is your enemy's daughter, you shouldn't have left your journal under your pillow. I know your secrets inside out. This lifetime, we start anew. Let's settle who wins. 3 major events have recently unfolded in the capital. First, the Shin family has fallen. As chief minister, Shin Rulin formed factions for personal gain, even colluding with the Su and Jiang families to smuggle salt and monopolize the court's finances. For years, he abused his power to promote incompetent aristocrats and allowed his subordinates to alter imperial examination questions, fostering a culture of corruption and favoritism. Shin Rulin was beheaded outside the Meridian Gate. All male members of his household were executed, while the women were exiled. The news sparked widespread public jubilation, with many hailing the emperor's wisdom. Second, word somehow spread that Xie Jingyu, the second son of the Xie family, kept a diary. Diary writing itself was no great matter, but the Xie clan was the maternal family of the empress dowager. Though the dowager had turned to Buddhism and renounced worldly affairs, the Xie family still held significant influence among the aristocratic clans and possessed knowledge of many secrets. Those secrets were all recorded in Xie Jingyu's diary. Rumor had it that the reason Shin's close relatives could be rounded up in one fell swoop was because the diary contained a complete list. In just 3 short days, the number of assassins sent to the Xie residence surged to over 10 times the previous count. The night before last, the head of the Xie family was assassinated. Amidst the murmurs of discontent from his clan, Xie Jingyu became the new head of the household. This happened a full 5 years earlier than in my previous life. After years as husband and wife, my heart ached. I sent 1,000 peonies to the Xie residence to add festive cheer, and Xie Jingyu accepted them all without hesitation. I watched him from afar. His expression remained unchanged, as if he felt no sorrow over his father's passing. A 1-inch-long scar stretched across his face, lending him an unnatural maturity and ruthlessness beyond his years. Having gazed upon that face day and night for over a decade, I could tell he felt not a shred of grief. My desire to watch faded. Turning to Xuanji, I ordered, "Follow the trail of those assassins. Eventually, you'll uncover everything the Xie family has ever done." Yes. When secrets are exposed, the closer the former ally, the more they wish you were dead. The third event, an imperial decree arrived, commanding Xiao Rongheng to marry me as empress. With the Shin family's corpses still warm, no one in court dared oppose Xiao Rongheng. In the first year of the Wending era, I became the first empress in court history to wield military authority. Luli told me that on the day the imperial decree arrived, Xie Jingyu cut down the century-old Polonia tree in the courtyard. I sighed deeply, unable to suppress a sense of regret. In the past, I often rested in that tree, feeling far more affection for it than for its owner. But it matters little. Knowing my love for Polonia, the emperor planted them throughout the imperial city. On the day of the grand wedding, I practiced before the mirror, adjusting my phoenix crown and rehearsing a smile of joyful anticipation until I finally mastered it. Outside, a cool breeze blew steadily, and crimson silk banners hung throughout the entire capital city. Yet, whether in my past life or this one, neither my parents nor my brothers were there to see me off. Holding Liu Li's hand, I stepped out of the mansion gates. At the very front of the wedding procession, I saw Xie Jingyu's face. He wore a crimson, narrow-sleeved dragon robe, its collar embroidered with gold patterns, a white jade pendant dangling at his waist. Paired with his face, more beautiful than any woman's, he radiated an overwhelming aura of grace and charisma. It briefly reminded me of my past life, how he'd come to fetch me with a smile by day, yet nearly killed me by night. 2 utterly despicable people, each having lived their lives into utter chaos. When he lifted my veil, he yanked my hair painfully. I flipped him over and pinned him beneath me, splashing wedding wine across his face. I vowed he'd regret this day forever. Xie Jingyu couldn't hold his liquor. Just a sip sent him reeling. He spun around, seized my throat, and forced wine into my mouth. His teeth gritted the wedding wine. I drank mine. "Now you must drink yours, my lady." How we ended up rolling together, I've long forgotten. I only remember clutching his neck while he slurred the name of the imperial consort into my ear. Qing Tang. Shin Qing Tang. It amused me. A childish brat. And a hopeless romantic at that. Today, his pomp was far grander than in my past life. Indeed, he is now the Marquis of Wuan. An imperial cousin. A noble marquis. Chosen by the empress dowager as the wedding envoy. Yet standing amidst the sea of crimson. His face was dark and gloomy. In 2 lifetimes, I'd never seen him look like this. Spotting me, he lifted his eyelids wearily. Now that my wish is granted, I see you're not particularly happy. The Marquis may also have his wish fulfilled. Leaning on his arm as I stepped into the bridal sedan chair, I arched an eyebrow at him with a smile. The convoy exiled to Lingnan moved slowly. If you chase after them today, you might still retrieve mission. And another thing, there is a proper distinction between sovereign and subject. Now, Marquis, you ought to address this palace as your highness. Xie Jingyu snorted derisively, pulling a bamboo slip from his pocket. Your servant obtained this from Tianning Temple yesterday. He said. It took 49 prayers to draw this single stick. Your Majesty, this union is destined for great calamity. Those reborn should trust in heaven's will. The moment Xie Jingyu drew that bamboo stick, I should have pierced his heart with it. An accident occurred in the coronation hall. Before the wedding wine was shared, Xiao Rongheng met his end. His expression shifted from nervous shyness to unbearable agony in the brief moment I lifted my gaze. The instant I raised my wine cup, Xiao Rongheng plummeted from the high platform. Chaos erupted among the crowd. I violently flung aside the beaded curtain at my forehead. Xie Jingyu stood distantly, watching me like a fallen immortal observing a fire across the river. The grand ceremony still couldn't proceed smoothly. Xiao Rongheng's cold poison flared up suddenly, leaving him unconscious in bed. Even though I'd made preparations in advance, ordering the imperial physician to check on him 3 times daily for pulse readings right after my rebirth, he still fell ill abruptly. Compared to my previous life, it happened a full 2 months earlier. I tried to feed him medicine, but he shook his head, refusing to take a single sip, and knocked over a bowl of herbal soup. I rose to fetch a fresh bowl, but he suddenly clutched my wrist. Unconscious, his brow furrowed tightly, haunted by some nightmare. I'm here. His frown eased slightly, though his face remained deathly pale. Everything is under control. Don't be afraid. Nothing will happen. My lips trembled, and I couldn't speak for a long time. When I was young, I didn't understand why Xiao Rongheng was so kind to me. I was slow to grasp things as a child. And as an adult, hatred blinded me. My eyes were fixed only on the faults of Xie Jingyu and the entire Xie family. The crown prince, no less, would disguise himself as a eunuch to sneak out of the palace and play with me. I took it for granted. In the bitter cold of the 12th lunar month, he used his body, poisoned by the cold, to build me a snowman. I turned a blind eye. That year, the Xie family turned the tables, accusing my father and brothers of disobeying military orders and plotting rebellion. In the end, they reaped what they sowed. The late emperor, swayed by slander, ordered my entire family exiled to Lingnan. My father and brothers died on the battlefield. My mother passed away prematurely from illness. All that remained in our household were the old, the weak, and the infirm. Lingnan was merely another name for a death sentence. Yet in a single night, while the soldiers sent to confiscate our property still stood before the manor gates, the imperial decree was revoked. The late emperor granted me a chance if the Pei family could pacify the northwest within 5 years. All past transgressions would be forgiven. Thus, after 3 years of mourning, I led troops to the northwest. Victory followed victory. And by 17, I held a second-rank official position. Many years later, I learned by chance from Xie Jingyu That winter, the crown prince knelt outside the hall of cultivating the heart all night, bearing his illness, ignoring the rapidly worsening cold poison within him. He pledged his life as surety for the Pei family. At the time, Xie Jingyu sneered with disdain, mocking Xiao Rongheng for his deep affection toward me. I said nothing. We often argued. I mocked him for his futile efforts. Achieving nothing in half a lifetime of scheming, he sneered at me for being powerless to avenge my great grievance. Forced only to torment each other. Yet only that night did I slit his throat with a dagger. Dare you show disrespect to His Majesty again? And tomorrow your head will grace the altar of the Xie family shrine. He laughed coldly, ignoring the deepening gash on his neck and the blood beading from the wound. Clutching my hand, he pulled me into his embrace. Then kill me. Even if you take my life, he won't survive. At worst, we'll die together. Xiao Rongheng seemed to have long anticipated his own demise. Before the coronation ceremony, he left an imperial edict. Should his health fail, all court affairs were to be entrusted to the empress. Having lived an extra decade, court matters now came naturally to me. Xie Jingyu had changed his ways, taking 15 days of sick leave. Just as I was puzzling over this, Liuli came to tell me that during the Double Ninth Festival, someone had seen Xie Jingyu and Shen Qingtang admiring the lanterns together. The memorial I was reviewing blurred with ink as Liuli called my name several times before I snapped back to reality. Sharing lanterns on Double Ninth Festival was indeed a promise Xie Jingyu and Shen Qingtang had made since childhood. Even after Shen Qingtang became imperial consort, Xie Jingyu still personally crafted lanterns each Double Ninth Festival, sending them into the palace. Back then, Xiao Rongheng lay long ill in bed, entrusting all affairs to Empress Dowager Xie. He refused to see anyone, naturally leaving no time to concern himself with them. My lady, since Shen Qingtang dares return to the capital, why not turn the tables? We could charge them all with harboring fugitives. I shook my head gently and handed her the secret letter. It came from Xuanji. I had dispatched her to track the assassin's movements and investigate the Xie family. She had vanished for half a month. And now a letter arrived from Tianning Temple. It contained only 6 sparse words. Empress Dowager Xie. 7th Prince. What could Xuanji mean by this? Empress Dowager Xie had devoted herself to Buddhism since the late emperor's reign. She hadn't even appeared during the fierce conflict between His Majesty and Prince Qing. Such a reclusive figure. Indifferent even to her own son, would she aid outsiders in assassinating her nephew? The letter vanished in the candle's flame, and my heart sank. The Empress Dowager wasn't indifferent to her son. She was indifferent only to Xiao Rongheng. That 5-year-old Xiao Rongen, however, had been raised by her side since infancy, cherished and doted upon beyond measure. Have the officials investigate thoroughly. I pushed the pile of approved memorials aside. Where is my lord going? To celebrate the Double Ninth Festival. I brought a renowned physician from outside the palace to tend to Xiao Rongheng, and his condition gradually improved. Though the poison couldn't be fully purged, it allowed him more lucid hours each day. The physician administered acupuncture as usual. Seeing me enter, his expression darkened. I understood immediately and waved for the attending palace attendants to withdraw. Well, is there truly no cure for His Majesty's poison? The physician shook his head. Your Majesty, forgive my bluntness. The toxin has accumulated over years, permeating His Majesty's vital organs. I fear. Fear what? He may not survive until next autumn. Impossible. He was poisoned in his youth. How could it have accumulated over so many years? Even in my previous life, he lived 10 more years. This poison is called the Ezanjoy powder. Once poisoned, the victim will die without apparent illness within a year. Outsiders cannot discern the cause, and the poison brings no pain whatsoever. Perhaps one day, after dreaming a beautiful dream, the person will simply ascend to heaven in their sleep. There is no cure for this poison, but it can be suppressed. However, with every word he spoke, my face grew paler. Yet to suppress it, one must fight poison with poison. Each year, ingesting the toxin itself, using toxin to counter toxin. But the body is hollowed out by the poison. Each toxin replacement feels like having sinews torn and bones pulled out. When the body can no longer bear the toxin, that is the true end. The wind outside is fierce. It's October, yet standing under the eaves, I already feel a bone-chilling cold. It's snowing. When Xiao Rongheng ascended the throne, they said it was an omen of bountiful harvests. But to my eyes, all that remained was a vast expanse of blankness between heaven and earth. Where could that poison be found? Ayin. I turned at the sound, shedding layer after layer of court robes. Xiao Rongheng looked even more gaunt than he had at 14. Stop searching. He smiled as brightly as the morning sun. I want to die with ease. Very well. I couldn't refuse him. This winter arrived unusually early, and the snowfall on Double Ninth Festival came as a surprise. Xiao Rongheng insisted on building a snowman, and no one in the palace could stop him. The tiny snowman was exquisitely crafted. Xiao Rongheng retrieved his own crown from the bedchamber and placed it upon the snowman's head. He even gave the snowman a name, Jiayin. We tacitly avoided discussing the poison. Avoided the person who administered it. After the poison was neutralized, his health steadily improved. On the night of the winter solstice, we ate dumplings together, cheering him on for his return to court the next day. But I forgot, the winter solstice was Xie Jingyu's birthday. Returning to the palace chambers late at night, I was too exhausted to notice the scent of alcohol lingering in the heavy snow. Only upon stepping inside was I shoved forcefully against the door. The chamber door slammed shut with a thud, eliciting a startled gasp from Liu Li. I looked up at him, sensing he was regressing with age, more reckless than he'd been at 20. Is the palace your home? Or have you lived long enough to fear death no more? Knowing he easily loses control when drunk, he never allowed himself to drink. He kept his head bowed, his unkempt bangs obscuring his eyes, leaving his emotions hidden from me. A long time passed, so long the snow had stopped, before he spoke bitterly. Sometimes I truly don't understand. You've read my journal, yet you still act as if nothing happened. If only you'd bowed your head to me then, none of this would have followed. His pride shattered in tears, while my eyes remained still as water. What was written in that diary? I remembered what mattered, and forgot what didn't. I vaguely recalled he had reasons he couldn't help but love Shinqingtang. In his youth, while traveling near the frontier, he was caught in an avalanche. When he was brought back, barely clinging to life, it was Shinqingtang who saved him. That noble lady seemed skilled in everything. Yet reviving a dying man was no simple feat. She used a charm, a lover's charm. Thus, she and Xie Jingyu became bound for life and death, sharing both ecstasy and agony. That face would appear in each other's minds the moment their hearts stirred. Therefore, no matter what, Xie Jingyu could never allow her to be buried alive with Xiao Rongheng, with the debt of saving his life compounded by the lover's charm. If I were Xie Jingyu, I too would be willing to pour out my heart and soul for her. As for whom he truly loved later, hidden in his diary, it didn't really matter. Love dies faster than life itself. What's the point of heartache when life is at stake? So what should have happened? Xie Jingyu, your father killed my father and brothers. My mother died the night before my birthday. Perhaps during those 10 years, he was kind to me. No matter what I did to him, his retaliation never truly hurt. As the years passed, he grew too weary even to retaliate. His chambers were filled with things I cherished, and every member of the Xie household treated me with utmost reverence. My favorite pastries appeared on my table each morning, and the capital's newest jeweled hairpins and jade ornaments arrived by the crate each month. Yet I was meant to hate him. so I refused to remember his kindness. The taunts of youth were real. Being hung from a tree for a day and night was real. The bitter clashes in court were real. The humiliation and torment that followed were real too. Words spoken, deeds done, not a single one could be erased by a moment of heart flutter. My shoulder felt damp. He seemed to be crying, I avenged you. Why can't you just relent? Revenge. Yes. How could a clumsy assassin ever match the military power held by Marquis Xie? Xie Jingyu poisoned his own father twice across lifetimes, clearly to inherit the military authority of the Marquis of Wuan, yet he had the nerve to claim it was for me. When you hung me from a tree for a day and night for Xinqingtang's sake, I didn't cry for help. Instead, I calculated 10,000 ways to kill you in my mind. Xie Jingyu. We are enemies. Acting like this makes victory feel utterly pointless. In emotional standoffs, the clear-headed and cold-hearted always hold the upper hand. He snapped his eyes open, desperately trying to project a menacing glare, unaware how laughable the tears glistening in his own eyes appeared. Pei Jiayin. With 3 letters and 6 rights. A proper marriage, you are my wife. Haven't you poisoned me yet? Remarriage doesn't count. I stared at him coldly, about to speak, when the palace doors suddenly swung open. Ian, you forgot today is your birthday. I went to the kitchen to cook you longevity noodles. Thud. The bowl of noodles crashed to the floor. I'd forgotten too, my birthday shares the same day as Xie Jingyu's. I instantly shifted to a tear-filled gaze directed at Xiao Rongheng. This posture mirrored Xie Jingyu's vengeful rage, drunkenly storming the palace to kill me, almost simultaneously with my tears welling up. Xie Jingyu froze in place, utterly stunned, fragile and helpless, pitifully vulnerable, back when my father and brothers were still alive. I often acted this way, clinging to them. Yet this tenderness, I had never once revealed it in Xie Jingyu's presence. Xiao Rongheng shoved him away. Drunkenness had seized his mind, he could barely stand. He collapsed to the ground, and in his flushed eyes, I saw boundless hatred. But this was not the man he would become a decade later. After Prince Qing's defeat, Xie Jingyu's former power base had been stripped bare. He hadn't yet had time to rebuild. Xiao Rongheng raised his sword to strike him down. I seized Xiao Rongheng's hand and shook my head gently. Don't kill him. He still has use. Xie Jingyu stared fixedly at our clasped hands, like a puppy abandoned by its master. His death sentence was commuted, but punishment remained, 30 lashes. Xie Jingyu was sent back to the Xie residence. His presence stirred unease within Xiao Rongheng. That night, Xiao Rongheng lay awake. I sat by his bedside, telling him stories, just as he had done for me when I was a child. In the story, a little boy was neither cherished by his father nor loved by his mother. As his mother grew increasingly haggard, he blamed his father. Back then, his mother was merely one of his father's concubines. The legitimate wife constantly humiliated her, leaving the mother walking on eggshells. To appease the legitimate wife, the father gave the boy to her to raise. Though living in a wealthy household, he endured cold and hunger. The legitimate wife's own son bullied him, and the servants looked down on him. Yet he always thought that if he behaved well enough, his mother might have a better life, even though she had never once come to see him. Later, his mother finally came to visit him. But that very night, he contracted the northern frontier cold poison. All clues pointed to the legitimate wife. Enraged, his father disowned her, and his mother became his father's wife. On the first day after recovering, he went to see his mother, only to find her cradling an infant. His mother gazed at the child with a tenderness he had never seen before. The childhood story abruptly ended, and I would draw the final lines for him. It didn't matter that the little boy couldn't have his mother's love, others would love him. The world was vast, someone would surely live for him. His Majesty, benevolent and compassionate, would be revered by all under heaven. He went south to quell floods, north to console loyal ministers. Though the world treated him unjustly, time and again he saved it. His ending should never have been like that. He shook his head with a smile. I ask for little. In this world, those who truly care for me are few and far between. If possible, Jiayin, I hope she finds happiness. I know you're still searching for the antidote to the elixir of eternal peace. But Yin, the agony when the poison takes hold is unbearable. I beg you, I have no other desires left in this life. Let me die in my happiest moment. Will you? Trust me, even after my death. No one will ever dare trouble you again. He rose with resignation, his cool fingertips brushing the corner of my eye. I hadn't realized I'd been crying again. This year passed in quiet peace. Xie Jingyu commanded the Xie family's troops, occasionally accompanying Shen Qingtang to buy flowers or sip tea, days spent in utter contentment. Xuanji's secret reports were always concise, but piecing them together revealed that behind the Xie family's machinations lay an even greater mastermind. The tranquilizing powder truly lived up to its name. The memory of Xiao Rongheng as a walking corpse faded, replaced by a vibrant glow in his brow. The court remained stable. As emperor, Xiao Rongheng proved far more capable than his father. At night, I taught him the leaf card game. He always praised my skill, while Liuli grumbled indignantly behind us, saying the master was a notorious cheat. When would Xuanji return? Then I would have an ally. It felt like the calm before the storm. On Lantern Festival night, Xiao Rongheng made a decision that shook heaven and earth. He hung beaded curtains behind the Imperial Council Hall, granting me the authority to govern behind the curtain. Xikong threatened suicide, denouncing the emperor as incompetent and beauty as a national disaster. Led by him, the entire censorate resigned en masse. Having finally found fault with the emperor, they wouldn't let it go easily. They fled faster than anyone during the war. Yet now they come to mock the hen crowing at dawn. 3 days later, I personally visited Xikong's residence. Xikong coldly sneered 3 times, presenting 2 demands for him to return to court. First, I must relinquish my military authority. Second, the emperor must hold a selection of consorts to perpetuate the imperial lineage. I must personally invite his granddaughter into the palace, securing her position as one of the 3 principal consorts at the very least. I listened respectfully to his words, nodding repeatedly in agreement before escorting Minister Siqua to his carriage. Siqua smiled, thoroughly satisfied. I was satisfied too. As the carriage journeyed toward the water towns of Jiangnan, I reflected that Siqua, with his noble character, could spend the rest of his days tilling the soil. The next day, I still took Xiao Rongheng's hand as we entered the Hall of Governance. Since every censor is in poor health, they need not hold office. The imperial examinations shall be held immediately. This palace requires a new cohort of censors capable of handling practical affairs. Tears of men flooded the censorate. Yet I have never been one to grant second chances. Xuanji sent word, the kite she made won the 7th prince's favor, and the empress dowager took her as a maid. Empress Dowager Xia appeared detached from worldly strife. Yet Xuanji witnessed Shen Qingtang and Xie Jingyu in the secluded chamber of the meditation hall. The Marquis of Wuan had sought refuge with his own maternal aunt, and that former imperial consort from my past life addressed Empress Dowager Xia with utmost reverence, calling her teacher. Around the time of the spring equinox, Xiao Rongheng's illness suddenly worsened. The Empress Dowager returned to court. After supper, I went as usual to observe the divine physician taking Xiao Rongheng's pulse. Yet the moment I stepped into the Tai Chi palace, I collided head-on with a child. "Who are you?" The boy cradled a doll, his childish face radiating spoiled arrogance. "Did you build that snowman in the courtyard?" Only then did I turn around. In the snow, Jiayin lay headless, the exquisite snowman shattered before spring's arrival. "Hey! This prince is speaking to you. How dare you not answer?" he shouted, lunging forward to punch and kick me, only to be yanked back by a maid behind him. Your Highness. That is Her Majesty the Empress. The Empress? I'll go tell Mother Empress right now, this prince wants no empress. Banish her to the coal palace. This prince will banish him to the coal palace. The maid hurried to cover his mouth. Your Highness. She is His Majesty's Empress. You should address her as Imperial sister-in-law. He's going to die. I can be emperor whenever I want. I'm going to be emperor now. Let him die. Let him die. His large eyes brimmed with ferocity, fixed on me. His rage stemmed solely from my failure to answer him. This was the seventh prince, the apple of Empress Dowager Xia's eye. The seventh prince's behavior is outrageous. He needs proper discipline. Spank him, then return him to the Empress Dowager. In my previous life, I never encountered the seventh prince. Even when Xiao Rongheng fell gravely ill and the Empress Dowager took power, the seventh prince remained secluded at Tianning Temple. Empress Dowager Xia lived a life of tranquility, yet the child she raised grew into an arrogant monster. Sister! A familiar voice called out behind me. The figure approaching, smiling charmingly, was none other than Shin Tang, whom I hadn't seen in months. Your Highness is royal blood. A golden branch and jade leaf. Even if he spoke out of turn, the Empress Dowager will guide him. Your actions here are hardly appropriate. Xiao Rongheng ran crying and shouting to Shin Tang's side. His eyes filled with hostility as he glared at me. I lifted my gaze lazily. Attendants. Slap her face. What kind of madwoman dares lecture this palace? Two matrons stepped forward, one on each side, pinning Shin Tang down and delivering a sharp slap. Shin Tang hadn't expected such directness and froze in place. Before she could react, the matrons raised their hands again for another slap. The sharp smacks echoed repeatedly, yet no one dared intervene. Xiao Ronglin swallowed hard, his expression growing distinctly bewildered. Only after 20 slaps had landed did I turn my gaze back to Shin Tang. So it is Miss Shin. My eyesight has been failing lately, I only just recognized you. Why abandon your parents' side to come here? Claiming kinship with this palace? Shin Tang covered her mouth, unable to speak for a long while. Having been granted the title of imperial consort by the Empress Dowager, she naturally had the right to address the consort as sister. Xia Jingyu appeared there as if out of nowhere, silent as a ghost. Jingyu. Shin Tang, her eyes brimming with tears, grabbed his robe and hid behind him. Xiao Rongan blurted out first, cousin. It's her. That wicked woman. She bullied Sister Tang and now she's trying to bully me. Go beat her up and avenge us. I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. The marquis truly knows how to make painful sacrifices. To this palace, the marquis, Miss Shin, and the seventh prince look more like a proper family of three. Xia Jingyu's brow twitched imperceptibly. The Empress Dowager requests your presence. The Empress might wish to pay her a visit. The Empress Dowager bore a striking resemblance to Xiao Rongheng. Her face radiated utmost gentleness, her eyes and brows conveying profound sincerity in every glance. Perhaps from prolonged residence in Buddhist temples, her speech and demeanor carried an air of universal compassion. Upon my arrival, she merely beckoned with gentle kindness. After I took my seat, she even personally poured me a cup of tea. Pei Ling's daughter has grown so tall in the blink of an eye. You've likely forgotten, when you were small, this palace held you in her arms. Such a tiny bundle. So adorable. I felt an instant connection with you then. Back then, you were just a teenager. When I asked what you wanted for your birthday, you cried and pleaded to marry Jingyu. His Majesty personally granted you a betrothal. Little did I know that after all these twists and turns, you would become my daughter-in-law. I held the cup of tea in my hand, my eyes lowered. I did not know Her Imperial Majesty the Empress Dowager had summoned me. What might this concern be? Empress Dowager Xia sighed deeply. Do you know why I chose you to be Rongheng's wife? This servant does not know. Rongheng's nature, put kindly. It is gentle and virtuous, put harshly. It is cowardice. In my heart, he was never the best choice for emperor. But Anur is different. I lifted my gaze to meet hers. When she spoke of our youngest son, her eyes shone brightly. Even though Anur has a wayward nature, I can see this child will achieve great things in the future. I chose you not to select an extraordinary empress for Rongheng. After Rongheng's death, when Anur ascends the throne, he will need a powerful empress dowager to consolidate his position. Regarding Xiao Rongheng's death, she was even colder than I had imagined. My voice carried a hint of bitterness. Your Majesty's boundless longevity naturally makes you a powerful pillar for His Highness. Why must you? She shook her head, utterly satisfied. I am not like you. The Xie family is not my support. Nor do I wield influence within the court or the realm. The new emperor needs an imperial sister-in-law who commands military power. One who can clear the path for his ascension to the throne. But you, child, have proven more capable than I ever imagined. The court's stability has arrived a full decade sooner than I anticipated. My hand trembled, and the teacup slipped from my grasp, shattering on the floor. So Xiao Rongheng had been nothing but a pawn in her game all along. A mother's favoritism could reach such extremes. The Empress Dowager's expression darkened. A maid stepped forward to replace my cup with fresh tea. This humble servant has one more question. Ask. The poison administered to His Majesty, was it administered by Your Majesty? She offered no reply, only gazed at me with a serene smile. Yet in her calm, composed expression, I saw the truth. The elixir of tranquility administered to Rongheng has no antidote. Yet had we not resorted to this method, both he and I would have perished within these treacherous palace walls. His years of agony have caused me, his birth mother, unbearable anguish. This year, I shall cease his poison. Come next spring, he shall depart peacefully. But this shall only occur once the Empress Dowager confirms his days are numbered and the throne is ceded to Anur. He won't live to see next spring. He stopped the medicine long ago. He won't survive this autumn. My face turned deathly pale. Yet Empress Dowager Xia seemed oblivious. She pushed the teacup toward me. Drink this tea. When the new emperor ascends the throne, you will still be the exalted Empress Dowager. Snow fell again. I gripped the doorframe as I stepped out of Yongshou Palace. My grip so tight it threatened to shatter the wood. Xie Jingyu approached me, umbrella in hand. The Empress Dowager had granted him command of the Imperial Guards. Now wielding such power, he was understandably elated. I warned you, Your Highness. This marriage is a grave misfortune. Mind your own affairs. Xie Jingyu shrugged, neither confirming nor denying. Empress Dowager Xia was not as detached from worldly affairs as she claimed. In truth, even after years in the Buddhist hall, her spies still permeated the palace. Most aristocratic clans revered her as their sovereign. Xin Qingtang, in particular, had been sent to Tianning Temple as a child to receive her tutelage. Had I not recently clipped so many of her wings, she would not have made her appearance at this moment. She treated her eldest son as a stepping stone to climb higher, coaxing me into her camp. Once Xiao Rongen truly ascended the throne, he would inherit a court utterly devoted to her. This was the most powerful woman in the realm. She truly embodied the saying, a parent who loves their child plans for their future with profound foresight. She had achieved her goal without shedding a drop of blood. But what if her precious child died? Since spring began, drizzles had lingered endlessly. That day brought a rare clear sky, an auspicious date meticulously chosen by the Empress Dowager through the Astronomical Bureau. Let it be today, she declared. A nation cannot remain leaderless for a single day. Having the Empress act as regent indefinitely is not a sustainable solution. Xiao Rongen, kite in hand, carefully stepped around me to stand beside the Empress Dowager. Mother, the weather is so lovely today. Your son wishes to take Xian kite flying. The Empress Dowager crouched down, gazing at him with affection. She tenderly stroked her young son's face, gently brushing his nose. Go play. I promise you, when you return, this entire realm will be yours. Still uneasy, she ordered Shen Qingtang to watch over him closely and instructed Xie Jingyu to dispatch elite imperial guards to accompany them. At the entrance to Taiji Palace, the Empress Dowager handed me the succession edict and a pill. He favored you most when lucid. Now that he lies unconscious, this task falls to you. With this pill, Rongheng will regain clarity for the duration of an incense stick. I took the items. Before departing, I asked her one final question. They are both your children. If His Majesty dies, will you grieve? She studied me for a long moment, then smiled. Rongheng's fate was always this. My heart sank. I still felt it was unfair for Xiao Rongheng, but as I stepped through the palace gates, the Empress Dowager called me back. Child, you are a woman too. Had you been rooted with me in this palace that devours its own? Had you endured its life and death power struggles? You would understand sooner or later. Not all children are alike. Some are disasters that destroy you, others are redemptions that save you. He witnessed my most wretched, most despicable side. How could he still see me as a loving mother? From the moment he followed the late Empress, our mother-son bond was severed. He once called the late Empress mother. In the family registry, he is the legitimate son of the late Emperor and Empress Yuan. I paused, not turning back. Yet he once tested poisons for you. During those days by the late Empress's side, he longed night and day for you to come for him. Even knowing you fed him poison, he never uttered a word of complaint. My voice was faint, yet Empress Dowager Xie heard every word. She let out a hollow laugh, a mix of resignation and scorn, then raised her eyes to the sky, whether to gaze upon her own ambition or to hide the tears welling in her eyes. No one could say. So then, after enduring all that suffering, he became crown prince, revered by all, and ascended the throne first. My inner has nothing, but it doesn't matter. Soon, I will hand this entire realm over to my inner, intact. You likely won't get that chance. The palace doors swung wide open. Xiao Rongheng stood on the steps, locking eyes with his mother. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The Empress Dowager's eyes held nothing but shock. The maternal love Xiao Rongheng had pursued his entire life lay trampled like mud, utterly shattered. Yet the Empress Dowager was the Empress Dowager. She regained her composure swiftly. You deceived me. You conspired with that whore by your side to betray your own mother? She is no whore. She is my wife. And you are no longer my mother. He paused, struggling for words before finally uttering bitterly, you yourself declared that my mother was the late Emperor's Empress Wenyi. Very well. Empress Dowager Xia laughed bitterly. Her facade shattered. She abandoned all pretense, but since you've stopped taking the medicine, you must know your days are numbered. If that's the case, why not pass the throne to your own younger brother? Must you truly follow others' example, neglecting your own brother to adopt an heir from the imperial clan? Xiao Rongheng shook his head, taking my hand amidst Empress Xie's venomous glare. I shall not pass the throne to Xiao Rongheng, nor seek an adopted heir. When I pass away, the Empress shall become the new Emperor of Great Chu. Very well. Splendid indeed. Then this palace will ensure your precious Empress dies alongside you. The Pei family's army now guards the northwest. Who gave you the audacity to act so arrogantly? You're young and ignorant of the world's limits. Jingyu, what are you waiting for? Kill them. Xie Jingyu's eyes never left me. He was still dazed when the Empress Dowager called his name. Jingyu, did you hear me? Only then did Xie Jingyu snap back to reality. Wait a little longer. Wait for what? Wait for my sincerity. Just as the Empress Dowager was about to press further, the sound of frantic footsteps suddenly echoed outside the door. Found it! Mistress! We found it! That dog Xie Jingyu didn't deceive us. The evidence the Xie family used to frame my lord all those years ago is truly at Tianning Temple. His voice preceded his appearance. Luli ran so fast she stumbled and collided with a man's back. Xie Jingyu hurriedly caught her. Thank you, sir. You dog. Scoundrel. She pressed her hand to her forehead. Liuli's expression turned serious. Master. It's all here. After 10 days of investigation, not a single secret letter has been missed. Empress Dowager Xie's face nearly split with fury. She glared at Xie Jingyu, grinding her teeth. Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? What good comes to you from the Xie family's downfall? Xie Qing favored his concubine over his wife, causing my mother's death. He doesn't deserve to be my father. You taught me that. Xie Jingyu spread his hands, adopting the carefree demeanor of a spoiled young master. As for madness, aunt, you flatter me. I'm nowhere near your level. Don't forget Shen Qingtang is still in my hands. If she dies, you won't live either. Xie Jingyu ignored him, instead turning his gaze to me. Is this interesting now? Pei Jiayin, if I die today, do you think we'll have another life? I pressed my lips together. Others looked at him with puzzlement, but I understood his meaning. But the Empress Dowager clearly wouldn't grant us time to ponder. Half her guards were Imperial Forest Guards, the other half her personal bodyguards. If fighting broke out, mutual destruction was inevitable. Strike! She commanded her guards. If need be, we'll all perish here today. The throne remains my son-in-law's. I sighed again. Fear not. It still won't be as you wish. I clapped my hands. The palace gates swung open. Led by Xuanji, the female warriors of the Pei clan charged forth on horseback, each wielding a sharp blade. Behind them, countless officers and soldiers were bound and dragged behind the horses. Already a bloody mess. You, the noble ladies of the capital, look down on women serving in the military. When enjoying flowers and tea, you take pleasure in mocking us. But Empress Dowager, these women have ridden the Northwest Desert since childhood alongside their parents, enduring far greater hardships than you. They safeguard the nation with their youth. Without their sacrifices and exile, how could you have your present? Fortunately, your disdain allowed us to lie in ambush in every corner of this capital. And fortunately, your overconfidence in achieving victory today enabled us to sweep your entire faction away in one fell swoop. I knew she hadn't heard a word I said, for the Empress Dowager's gaze was fixed intently on Xuanji. You. How are you here? Where is my inner? Xuanji glanced at me, waiting for my nod before speaking slowly. The seventh prince, in his playfulness, drowned in the lotus pond. By the time we found him, he had already passed away. The Empress Dowager, who had orchestrated everything from behind the scenes, finally collapsed to the ground like any ordinary mother. In that instant, the dignified woman aged more than 10 years. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she staggered to her feet and swayed toward me. Only when she drew a dagger from her sleeve was she pulled down by Xiao Rongheng. Why? You venomous woman. My inner had no quarrel with you. No quarrel. He was just a child. How could you bear to harm him? I adjusted my robes. This farce should end tonight. Before leaving, I gave her a faint glance because he kicked over my snowman. Just for that? I had intended to bury Xiao Rongheng in the Imperial Mausoleum, but Xiao Rongheng refused. He is not of the Xiao bloodline. There is no reason to bury him in the Xiao Imperial tomb. My hand paused as I reviewed the memorials. What does this mean? He sighed deeply. Mimicking my old manner, I once thought mother favored Ronan because he was the child of her beloved. But no, she simply hated me all the more. Empress Dowager Xia had known carefree youth. As a young woman, she fell for a fortune-teller from the southern frontier who roamed the streets. But how could the head of the Xia clan ever consent to his sister eloping with a lowborn? The emperor took a fancy to her, and she had to enter the palace. The southern frontier youth was banished beyond Jiaguan Pass. The Xia siblings severed ties, with no contact for 20 years. Until 6 years ago, when envoys from the southern frontier entered the Central Plains. The Empress Dowager reunited with her youthful love and bore his child. At that time, the late emperor was gravely ill and had no time to attend to the Empress Dowager. So, under the pretext of Buddhist prayers for blessings, she moved permanently into Tianning Temple. She thought it was love by association. Yet after the child was born, she killed her former beloved without hesitation. He was a southern frontier noble who never came for her, and she had long harbored resentment. Xiao Rongheng's poison, Xie Jingyu's bug, both were skills the Empress Dowager learned from that man. After reviewing the memorials, I felt 1,000 bitter tastes in my heart. So I set down my brush and embraced him from behind. The Xie family's crimes were exposed. Xie Jingyu's merits and demerits balanced each other out, allowing him to retain his marquis title. But his uncles, who had participated in the frame-up years ago, weren't so fortunate. When the Xie family was beheaded, Xie Jingyu even brought a chair to watch the execution. The Xie family cursed him as a thankless bastard, their spittle nearly splattering his face. He remained unperturbed, even humming a tune with leisurely ease. Others may not know, but I do. More than 70% of those who attempted to assassinate Xie Jingyu recently came from his own uncles. The power struggles within great clans rival those of the imperial family. Empress Dowager Xie took her own life within the imperial prison. In her final moments, perhaps her conscience stirred. She wept and begged to see Xiao Rongheng one last time. But he was busy building a new snowman, refusing her request without even looking up. Reflecting on this Empress Dowager's life, filled with dramatic twists, fierce passions, and unyielding hatred, it was truly legendary. Qin Qingtang went mad, though whether it was genuine or feigned remains unclear. She cast aside the dignity she once prized above all, dancing day and night in the courtyard like a madwoman. Xie Jingyu could bear it no longer and had her bound and taken to the Buddhist hall. She kept dancing until my feet hurt. Xie Jingyu explained. I knew he wasn't lying. Because that day, I had ordered Qin Qingtang to be slapped 20 times. When Xie Jingyu appeared afterward, both sides of his handsome face were flushed bright red. The world was at peace, and everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction. But the day of parting would inevitably come. The emperor passed away on the day of the spring equinox the following year. He lived longer than both the divine physician and the Empress Dowager had predicted. It was an ordinary afternoon, with fewer memorials than usual. He expressed a desire to leave the palace for a walk, so I took him to the lookout outside the imperial city. Following this path ahead, there lies a mountain. Beyond that mountain is Tianjia village, where my father first made his fortune. He passed the military examinations as top scholar, becoming a general who defended our homeland. Looking back, it was all Your Majesty's realm. Wang Ernyang had spent her entire life selling tofu at the alley entrance. Uncle Li the blacksmith still hadn't managed to buy his own shop. And Little Belle sang her self-composed tunes at the Drunken Immortal Pavilion until her voice was hoarse. He chuckled. How come you know everyone? I smiled back. Let me tell you a secret. In my past life, I was a poisonous woman, unhappy myself. I always wanted to make others miserable too. So I roamed the streets, seeking out others' misfortunes. But I realized I was wrong. What was wrong with that? When I asked Wang Ernyang what troubled her, she smiled and gave me a free block of tofu. When I asked Uncle Li when he felt unhappy, he sighed. picked up the sword I'd dropped, and silently sharpened it for me. When I asked little Belle what troubled her, she widened her eyes, dragged me into the drunken immortal pavilion, and pulled me into her bedroom plastered with songs she'd composed. She said one day she'd sing her way out of Chu, out into the world. But seeing my gloom, she decided to sing all her songs just for me. After that day, I silently vowed, if there is a next life, I will never be a poi sonus woman again. He leaned against my shoulder, his breath growing faint. What of Jiaoyin? Where will Jiaoyin be in the future? I lowered my gaze. Jiaoyin has dissolved. Jiaoyin dissolved long ago in the gardens of the Tai Chi Palace. He smiled softly, and I smiled too. When we had laughed enough, he suddenly clasped my hand. I'm sorry. That year on the snowy mountains of the northern frontier, I didn't manage to save you. So even if you choose to go with him, I won't hold a single ounce of resentment. At 11, I followed my father and elder brother to the northwest to suppress rebels. The young crown prince accompanied the army on campaign. That was my first encounter with snow-capped mountains. I snuck away from my father and brother to play in the snow, only to be buried deep in the mountains by a sudden avalanche. That same year, Xie Jingyu's mother had just passed away. His father schemed to install his illegitimate elder brother as crown prince, transferring military authority to the bastard son. The Marquis of Xie declared Xie Jingyu too unruly, destined only for a life of leisurely travel and sightseeing as an ordinary young master. But Xie Jingyu committed the unthinkable. He dug up his mother's grave. Her skeletal remains were dark purple from head to toe, and inside her belly lay the unformed skeleton of a child. He swallowed his anger silently and secretly followed the Pei family's army to the northwest, hoping to establish himself through military merit. Unexpectedly, while gazing at the moon in the dead of night, longing for his mother, he spotted a furtive little maid. He followed her deep into the mountains and happened to rescue her from a perilous situation. Alas! His own life hung in the balance from the rescue, and before he could achieve anything, he was sent back to the Xie household in disgrace. The Marquis of Xie sought to cast him aside, and no one in the Xie family would save him. It was the empress dowager who gave him a chance. That was the first time he saw Shen Qingtang. Later, having gained the empress dowager's favor, he returned to the mansion, personally slaying his father's concubine and his half-brother, reclaiming everything that rightfully belonged to him. A year later, the youngest daughter of the Pei family returned to the capital, weeping and insisting she would marry none but her savior. The late emperor had already decreed their union. All that is past now, Your Majesty. Had you not spoken of it, I would have forgotten. My voice softened unconsciously as he slowly closed his eyes. Perhaps he would never open them again. Perhaps from enduring too long in fear. When this day finally came, I found myself unable to weep. As the sun set, I saw Xie Jingyu's figure. He had been standing there for who knew how long. That day in your palace, you promised to leave the capital with me to travel and enjoy the scenery once your wrongful conviction was cleared. Only then did I agree to help you. I watched him quietly and smiled. My husband, deceived by me so many times, how has he still not learned his lesson? He was furious, yet had no words to say. If you wish to leave, the world is vast, go as you please. He sighed deeply. Very well. I am weary too. Let me witness how you become the world's first empress. The vernal equinox arrived gently, and all things revived. It is precisely because the world knows desolation that spring returns in endless cycles. The end.